Remember that $1.3 trillion spending bill the other week put together by the leaders of both parties in Congress and handed to the president as a done deal just days before the government shutdown deadline? At the time, we called it a swamp bill, written by special interests for special interests. And how right we were. We've taken a closer look at that 2,200-page piece of legislation. The omnibus spending bill is tonight's Swamp Watch. One of the things people liked about the omnibus bill was more money for the military, especially a 2.4% pay raise for our troops. But how generous was that really? When you adjust for inflation, it's actually a 0.1% raise in terms of real spending power. And it's even less impressive when you compare it to the raise that the military industrial swamp got from the bill. The total increase in the defense budget was $55 billion. The raise for our troops adds up to roughly $200 million. So just 0.3% of the spending increase will actually go to our troops. 0.3%. Think about that number when all those pompous members of Congress tout their generosity to our men and women in uniform. Their real generosity was to the defense contractors, including $577 million to Boeing for 17 helicopters and $5.4 billion for 2 submarines produced by General Dynamics and Huntington Ingalls Industries. What do you think explains that generosity? You know the answer. This is the swamp, after all. It's lobbying and corruption, of course. Huntington Ingalls Industries has spent over $622,000 on political donations just in the 2018 election cycle, including a well-placed $10,000 to House Appropriations Committee member Stephen Palazzo. And no less than 88% of the lobbyists they hired had previously held government jobs, including one named Erskine Wells, a lobbyist for BGR Group who previously served as chief of staff to none other than Congressman Stephen Palazzo. Isn't that neat? But the special interest corruption goes much farther than the military-industrial complex. Nearly every major item in this disgraceful bill was influenced by someone who stood to gain from it. For example, the bill included over $290 million for rural health programs, nearly doubling the budget. These programs include flexibility grants designed to enhance quality and, quote, improve financial viability for these hospitals. They certainly do improve financial viability for the lobbyists who squeeze that money out of Congress. There just so happens to be a National Rural Health Association that just so happened to spend over $500,000 since 2016 lobbying the federal government, with a number of their lobbying contracts specifically directed at appropriations and the federal budget. Now, every good lobbying effort needs a revolving door, and the National Rural Health Association is no exception. One of their lobbyists, Diane Kalmus, previously worked as a legislative assistant to Congressman Kevin Brady, current chairman of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee. Another, Margaret Elawani, previously worked as chief counsel to Senator Lisa Murkowski, who serves on the Senate Appropriations Committee. No wonder this association managed to double its funding from the government. The worst thing is, this is also brazen. Many members of Congress are actually bragging about the funding that they helped get for the interests that are funding their own re-election campaigns. Democratic Senator Catherine Masto recently touted the extra money she got for the University of Nevada, but the University of Nevada is also one of her top 5 donors since 2013. And look at this one. Republican Senator Sherrod Brown sent out a press release celebrating how he helped secure the highest ever funding levels for the Children's Hospital's graduate medical education program. That program, which provides money to children's hospitals to train pediatricians, will get $315 million this year. Now, no wonder Senator Brown is celebrating. It turns out some of that money ends up in his own campaign coffers. The Cleveland Clinic Children's Hospital, which gets money from the program, is part of the Cleveland Clinic Hospital that is the 4th highest source of campaign contributions in Senator Brown's political career. All told, members of the Cleveland Clinic Hospital have given him more than $180,000. That same hospital spent nearly $1.5 million on lobbying between 2016 and 2017. And it gets better. One of their lobbyists, Carlos Jackson, formerly worked for, you guessed it, Senator Sherrod Brown. And just to be clear, this isn't some small, charming local hospital. Cleveland Clinic is an enormous business with facilities in multiple states. It's even expanding into other countries. In 2015, they made nearly $500 million in profit and paid their CEO nearly $5 million. Well, I guess it's no wonder they're making so much money when they're so good at milking the public purse. Of course, what was missing from the wretched omnibus bill was the one thing you actually voted for, the wall. Congress couldn't find the $25 billion needed for that. But, surprise, surprise, they miraculously managed to find that kind of money to spend on themselves. $9 billion for the Federal Buildings Fund, which provides for construction, repairs, cleaning, utilities and other maintenance costs of federal buildings. $700 million for the architect of the Capitol Department to allow it to maintain current operations and prioritize the critical projects that address safety concerns for all who visit and work in the Capitol complex. The agreement expresses support for the time-honored tradition of sledding on Capitol grounds. Thank God for that. Sledding on the Capitol grounds is secured. Now, how about our borders? Congress also found an extra $200 million for Treasury Department salaries and expenses. Aren't these the people who are supposed to save us money? And you guessed it, the House and the Senate budgeted over $2 billion for the House and the Senate, but virtually no money for the wall. There is one reassuring thing, though. The omnibus bill included nearly $5 billion for the European Reassurance Initiative. Billions for Europe, but nothing for what you voted for. This spending bill, like nearly everything else in Washington, is a gigantic swamp of inefficiency and corruption. The more you spend on lobbying and political donations, the more you get from the taxpayer. That's how our government works. No wonder people want a revolution.